The jar of Vegemite in your cupboard right now spent 91 years being owned by someone who wasn't Australian. From 1926 until 2017, the most Australian thing in the country, the spread we put on our kids' toast, the one we tell tourists they won't understand, belonged to foreign companies. And that's the one with a happy ending. Most of the others on this list never came home. I went through the company filings, the stock market announcements, the actual sale documents, not the rumours, the paperwork, for the brands you'd swear on your life are Australian. The biscuit in your cupboard, the juice in your fridge, the rum in your cabinet. And what I found is that a huge number of the icons you think of as ours answer to a boardroom in New York or London or Frankfurt or Tokyo. But here's the thing I need you to hold on to the whole way through because it's the part nobody tells you and it changes everything. Foreign owned does not always mean it left. Some of these are still made right here by Australians in the same factory they always were. I'll show you exactly which is which because the difference matters and the people selling you the green and gold kangaroo are counting on you not knowing it. Walk through your own kitchen and you'll feel the weight of this. The biscuits in the cupboard, the chips in the pantry, the ice cream in the freezer, the spread on the bench, the rum above the fridge. Pick them up one by one, and a startling number of them are owned somewhere else now. Not a couple, most of the famous ones. And the strange part is you'd never know from the packet because the packet is designed so you won't. And there's one name on this list that will fool you 3 separate times. Same word on 3 different products, and the answer is different every single time. I'll get to it. Stay for it, because it's the one that gets everybody. By the end, you'll know who really owns the Aussie icons, which ones quietly left, and which ones never did. And the handful that were actually bought back and brought home. Let's get into it. Here's the thread. Across the last 25 years, a wave of private equity firms and global food giants worked out something simple. An Australian icon is worth more than an Australian company. The name, the nostalgia, the little flag in your memory, that's the asset. So they bought the names KKR, Kraft Heinz, PepsiCo, Diageo, one after another. And it helps to understand what a private equity firm actually is. Because the same kind of owner keeps showing up on this list. A private equity firm isn't a baker or a brewer. It's a fund. It buys a business with mostly borrowed money, runs it to make the numbers look as strong as possible, and then sells it again a few years later for a profit. That's the whole model. It's not evil. It's just that the goal was never to make you a better biscuit. The goal is the sale at the end. And when the thing being bought and sold is the brand your grandmother trusted, the priorities quietly change, even if the packet doesn't. And here's the trick that lets them keep your trust after they've bought it. There are 2 different claims that look identical on a package and mean completely different things. Australian made. The green and gold kangaroo only certifies that the product had its last big change made here. It says nothing, not one word, about who owns the company. Australian owned is the one that's actually about ownership, and it's the one that quietly disappeared off a lot of these labels. So the kangaroo can sit proudly on a product owned by a New York hedge fund. Legally. That's not a loophole. That's the system working as designed. Keep that in your head as we count up. Now, from the surprising to the gut punch, let's start gentle. Aeroplane jelly. I like aeroplane jelly. Aeroplane jelly for me. The jingle from 1938, one of the longest running ads in Australian history. If anything sounds Australian, it's that. It's American. Aeroplane jelly is owned by McCormick, the big US spice company, which bought it back in the mid-90s, ending about 70 years of the Appleroth family running it. But, and here's the first time I get to show you the distinction that runs through this whole video, it's still made here. Clayton, Victoria. 24 million packets a year, enough to fill 5 Olympic pools. American owned. Australian made. Both true at once. Hold that, because it's about to matter a lot more. That's the soft open. Now it gets bigger. Golden circle. The juice. The tinned pineapple. The beetroot you put on a proper Aussie burger. For most of its life, it was something genuinely special. A cooperative founded in 1947 and owned by the very Queensland farmers who grew the fruit. Think about what that means. When you bought a tin, the money went back to the growers up the road. It was about as local as a food business can be. In 2008, the American giant Heinz came for it. There was a bidding tussle. Coca-Cola Amatil had a go too, but Heinz won, and the takeover finished that December, valued at around $288 million. In one transaction, Golden Circle went from a farmer-owned Queensland co-op to a line item on an American multinational's balance sheet. Heinz became Kraft Heinz in 2015, the Warren Buffett-backed food giant. So today, the beetroot on your burger is owned out of the United States. The fair part, again, because I'll keep being straight with you, it's still made at Northgate in Brisbane. The factory stayed, the growers co-op did not. That's the pattern you're going to see again and again on this list. The jobs sometimes stay, but the ownership and the profit leaves the country. Walk down the chip aisle, Smiths, Twisties, Burger Rings, Cheetos. You'd assume at least some of that is Australian. Almost none of it is. Smiths and Twisties are PepsiCo, American, through Frito-Lay since 1998. And here's a good one. When that deal happened, the competition regulator forced PepsiCo to spin off some brands so it wouldn't own the whole aisle. That spin-off created Snack Brands Australia, which sounds reassuringly local. Except Snack Brands isn't Australian either. Not anymore. Cheezels, the ring you put on your fingers as a kid, is now owned by a German company, Intersnack. And the German ownership comes with a cost you can see. The Australian factories are closing. Blacktown shut early 2025. Smithfield was slated to close late 2025, leaving one consolidated site. So that's the chip aisle. American on one side, German on the other, and a couple of Sydney factories switching off the lights. If you're already doing the maths on your own pantry, subscribe, because this is what the channel does every week, the paperwork behind the brands. And keep that one name in the back of your head, the one that fools you 3 times. We're almost there. 2 more, then the gut punch, then the good news, because there is good news and it's better than you'd think. Streets, Paddle Pop, Golden Gay Time, Splice, the sound of an Australian summer. For decades it was Unilever, already foreign, British Dutch. But here's the part that's so recent most people haven't caught up, and it's exactly the kind of thing a lazy video gets wrong. In December 2025, Unilever spun its entire ice cream business off into a separate company, the Magnum Ice Cream Company, headquartered in the Netherlands. So as of right now, your Golden Gay Time is owned by a Dutch-listed company that didn't exist in that form a year ago. Still made at Minto in New South Wales. The cream ones, anyway. The water-based ones are imported from China. And back in 2017, the company tried to tear up the workers' agreement at that Minto factory. The union said it meant a pay cut of nearly half for around 140 workers. The factory stayed open, but that's the pressure sitting behind the ice cream. Foreign owned, mostly still made here, with a fight in the back room you never saw. The pattern again. And while we're in the freezer, Peters, Drumstick, Maxibon, Connoisseur, Frosty Fruits. The other half of the Australian ice cream cabinet, also not Australian, Peters is owned by Fronnery, a European joint venture between Nestlé of Switzerland and a French private equity firm called PAI. So stand in front of the ice cream freezer at your local servo and look at it honestly. One side is Dutch, the other side is Swiss and French. The 2 names that defined an Australian summer, and not one of them answers to anyone in this country. Peters is still made at Mulgrave in Victoria. The factory's here. The owners are an ocean away. Same story. Colder. Quick one, because it catches people and because most videos will get it wrong. Bushels, the tea. There's no other tea like Bushels. On Australian shelves since 1883. For decades it was Unilever, already foreign. But Unilever sold its entire global tea business in 2022 to a private equity firm called CVC Capital Partners. So if you read somewhere that Bushels is Unilever, that's out of date. It's owned by a private equity fund now, and the tea itself is imported and blended because Australia doesn't grow tea at any real scale. A cup of the most familiar tea in the country. Foreign owned, foreign grown, and changed hands so recently most people never noticed. Now the big one. Arnott's, Tim Tams, Shapes, Iced Vovos, Scotch Fingers. If there is one company Australians assume is bone deep ours, it's Arnott's. It's been baking in this country since 1865, older than Federation. The parrot logo, the Tim Tam Slam. This is as Australian as a brand gets. It's owned by KKR, one of the largest private equity firms in the world, run out of New York. Here's how it happened. The American soup company Campbell's had quietly owned Arnott's since 1997, so it had already been American for over 20 years, which catches a lot of people on its own. Then, in December 2019, Campbell's sold Arnott's off to KKR. So it went from one American owner to another, and from a soup company to a hedge fund. And let me give you the number correctly because almost everyone gets this wrong, including the news. You'll hear 3.2 billion. That's wrong. The actual figure from Campbell's own filing to the United States securities regulator was about 2.2 billion US dollars. The 3.2 number mixes in other businesses Campbell's sold at the same time. I'm giving you the right one because that's the entire difference between this channel and the ones that just copy each other's homework. Here's the part that earns Arnott's a bit of credit, and I'll always give it where it's due. The Tim Tam is still made in Western Sydney, at Huntingwood, about 3,000 of them a minute, 20-odd tons of cream filling and 27 tons of chocolate a day. Still made here, by people here. But there's a difference between where a thing is made and who it's made for. The biscuit's the same. The profit now flows to a private equity firm whose entire reason to exist is to make a number go up and eventually sell the whole thing to the next buyer. You're not the customer anymore. You're the asset. That's the gut punch. Now the name I promised you at the start, the one that gets everybody, Bundaberg. Say it to any Australian and they picture the same thing. The rum, the bear, the ginger beer, the sugar town in Queensland. One name. The most Australian-sounding name on this entire list. Watch how many times it fools you. The rum. Bundaberg rum. The bear. The bottle. The bloke's drink. The thing half the country's 21st were built on is British. Owned by Diageo, the London multinational since 2000. Diageo's the company behind Johnny Walker and Smirnoff, and the Bundy Bear sits right there in their portfolio next to them. And in 2014, Diageo moved most of the bottling out of Bundaberg and down to Western Sydney, taking jobs out of the very town the rum is named after. The local mayor and the Queensland Premier publicly went after them for it. A rum called Bundaberg, no longer bottled in Bundaberg. So, British-owned, bottled in Sydney. Strike one. The sugar. Bundaberg sugar, the actual sugar, milled from the actual cane grown in the actual fields around the actual town, is Belgian. Owned by a Belgian family holding company called Fina Sucre since 2000, when it was sold for around $425 million. It's one of the biggest cane operations in Queensland, and it has been owned out of Brussels for a quarter of a century. The sugar, with the town's name stamped on it, hasn't been Australian since the year 2000. Strike two. And then there's the ginger beer. Bundaberg brewed drinks. The stubby brown bottle. The cloudy brew. The one in every servo fridge, surely owned by the same lot as the rum or the sugar or some giant offshore drinks company. It's not. This is the one that's actually still ours, owned by the Fleming family in Bundaberg since 1968. Still family run, still brewed in the town it's named after, never sold offshore. The founder, Cliff Fleming, was made a member of the Order of Australia. The most foreign-sounding setup on the list, 3 icons, 1 town's name, and the humble ginger beer is the last man standing. So there it is. 1 name, 3 icons, 3 different countries, British, Belgian, and finally Australian. The rum that left, the sugar that left, and the ginger beer that stayed. If you guessed all 3 right, you're the only one. Everybody gets fooled by Bundaberg. That's the whole video in 1 word. Drop the bear in the comments if Bundaberg got you. The rum or the sugar, be honest? I want to know how many of us were wrong. Because now we flip it, and this is the part I actually enjoy. The ones that came home. Everything so far has been the leaving. Here's the returning. And it's a genuinely good story because it's rare and it's hard and it happened anyway. Vegemite, the one from the start of the video, for 91 years, foreign owned, invented in 1923, and somehow never fully Australian owned, ending up in the hands of the American giant Mondelez. Then in 2017, an Australian company stepped up, Bega, which started life as a humble farmers cooperative in the town of Bega, New South Wales, bought it back for $460 million. Bega's chairman, Barry Irvin, called it a big day for a boy from Bega. It was the first time Vegemite had been fully Australian owned since 1926, 91 years. The jar on your toast came home, and it took a former dairy co op to do it. And Bega didn't stop there. This is where it gets genuinely good. In 2020, a whole stable of dairy brands you grew up with, Dairy Farmers, Pura, Masters, Big M, Farmers Union, were about to be sold to a Chinese dairy company called Mengniu. The deal was basically done, and the Australian Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, stepped in and blocked it, said it was contrary to the national interest. That left the door open, and Bega walked through it, bought the lot for $534 million in 2021 and kept them in Australian hands. Almost $70 million cheaper than the blocked Chinese offer as it happened. Those brands didn't drift home by luck. The government held the door, and an Australian company carried them through it. There are others worth knowing. Bonox, the beef drink your nan made you when you were crook. Quietly Australian again, also bought by Bega. And here's a correction worth making out loud because plenty of people get it wrong. Bonox is not Unilever, that's Bovril, a different British product. Bonox is ours. Rosella, the tomato sauce, collapsed into receivership in 2013, and an Australian family, the Pressers, bought it and brought it back. Even Allen's Lollies, Snakes, Party Mix, Minties, they're Nestle owned. Swiss, yes, but in 2021, Nestle actually brought the production back from New Zealand to Broadford in Victoria. Foreign owned, but the jobs came home. And a few never left at all, and they deserve their moment while we're here. Wheat Bix, owned by Sanitarium, which is Australian, even if it's an unusual one. It's owned by a church and pays no income tax, which its rivals have complained about for years. 4 and 20 Pies, Australian owned, through an Australian private equity firm. Penfolds, Australian, ASX listed, and Bundaberg Ginger Beer, well, you know that one now. They're still ours, and now you know to actually back them. So what do you do with all this? 3 things, and none of them are feel bad about a biscuit. 1. Stop reading the green and gold kangaroo as Australian company. It isn't. It means made here, which is genuinely worth supporting, because that's the jobs. But if you specifically want to back an Australian-owned business, the kangaroo won't tell you. You have to look for Australian-owned, which is a different claim, or just know the names. 2. Know that made here still matters even under foreign ownership. The Arnott's worker in Huntingwood, the Golden Circle line in Brisbane, those jobs are real, foreign owner or not. Buying made in Australia keeps people employed even when the profit flies out. It's not all or nothing. 3. When an Australian company does buy one back, Bega with Vegemite, with the dairy brands, that's the rare one worth rewarding with your money because it almost never happens. The default direction is out. Home is the exception. Here's the one thing to carry out of this. The flag on the packet was never a promise about who owns the company. It was a feeling. And the feeling is exactly what got bought and sold. KKR, Kraft Heinz, Diageo, a Dutch ice cream company that's a year old. They didn't buy factories. They bought your memory of these brands because your memory is the most valuable thing on the shelf. But a few came home, and now you know which is which left, which stayed, and which one fools you 3 times. So tell me, which one actually shocked you? The biscuit, the chips, or the bear? And did you know about Bundaberg? Be honest in the comments. I read them. And next week we're going inside one shelf of the supermarket they make the most money on and tell you the least about. After this, you'll want to see it. Subscribe so it lands when it drops.